Hi, I'm Julienne Joyner from the film Unhinged, and you're watching The ARROYO Show. Sometimes I hit the ground really hard, and when I see the edit, I'm like, that didn't look nearly as like it felt. So I felt that, and that kind of looks like, oh, she fell.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The ARROYO Show. I am Brandon Arroyo. Joining us on the line right now, Julienne Joyner. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Yes, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thank you for spending a little bit of your time with us today. We're also excited to see the film. Going to be coming out on July the 10th. Russell Crowe starring in The Unhinged. And Julienne going to be having some fun in this one, I'm going to assume. Talk to me about it. Unhinged trailer is officially out. Have you seen it? What were your first thoughts when you saw it?
I have seen it, and my first thoughts when I saw it were, he looks creepy, and he is. Russell Crowe's character, of course. And it definitely gave me that kind of suspenseful feeling that I know we were trying to create while making the film, and I think everybody just did such a good job with it. But,
Julienne
yes.
Joyner joining us on the line right now, playing the role of Mary in this film. You do a lot of stunt work traditionally. How does preparation for you differ when you're portraying a character predominantly versus a role that's predominantly stunt related?
Okay, yes, they definitely differ. One thing being, I don't have my stunt bag with me when I go to set to play.
What is a stunt bag?
Okay, so a stunt bag is what I normally bring. It is a bag, and it is full of all your pads that you might need, or a harness, or extra pads if other people might need them. But it's all kinds of kind of thrown together. Even some of mine are like 8 to 10 teenage boy rib pads that they use for football. I use those. Like, it's just got all different kinds of pads and what you might need. So, and you always have it with you everywhere you go. And I'm always close to it because you never know when you might need to throw in a knee pad or a hip pad or something. So it was weird to be on set. It's always weird to be on set without my stunt bag, but I do love it. It's more about kind of connecting with your fellow actors. I'm definitely quieter a bit when I'm doing acting and trying to settle in to those kind of nerves. It's a very more of a still nervousness than when it comes to stunts. It's 0 to 100. It's real quick. It's let's go, let's do it. Whereas acting, there's definitely a sense of quietness internally for me.
I go to a lot of general admission concerts where it's like just the open bottom floor. I feel like that stunt bag could really come in handy. You're trying to get through people that are all real close to you, or in coronavirus, just in general, keep that social distancing. Let people know you got the stunt bag ready for them.
Definitely.
Okay, so you talk about preparing. It's a little bit more quiet when you're going into a role like this. Does it change at all, like on your day of, while you're on set, while you're at the soundstage or on location? What does your day look like when you're doing stunt work that's different than when you're doing a performance? Because the stunt work, I would imagine, probably have to do a lot of stretching, probably have to do a lot of hydrating. Would that be the case?
Yeah. So you're constantly kind of warming up with stunts. You never quite know when they're going to be like, we need you. And when they need you, you need to be ready to go right then. They're not like, hey, I need 10 more minutes to finish stretching this out usually. So you're always kind of prepped, always ready to go. So those are the big things, is the physicality. When I'm doing stunts, I'm always going to be doing something physical. I'm using my body. I want my body to be warmed up, and do the same with acting. I still warm up my body and get my body in check. So I think it's kind of cool that I bring my stunts with me, because I do want my body to feel alive, even if I am just acting. So I will still do a physical warm up when I'm acting. I am just usually a little bit more focused on reading lines and memorizing dialogue, because in stunts, obviously, there's not much dialogue to be memorized, and I'm using much more of my body in a physical way, as in like hitting the ground. Whereas acting, I am still using my body, of course, and being in my body, but I'm using my voice, which I'm not using in stunts. So I do kind of prep up my voice and things like that more when I'm acting instead of, with stunts. So
For most people, falling to the ground is something that you try to avoid doing. For you, it's the intention to fall to the ground and make it look good. How did you first get into stunt work, and what was it about it that made you want to get into it?
So I first got into stunt work. Actually, I was in college and I had it's a dirt bike. It was a street legal. It's a dual sport Honda CRF 230 for those of you who are interested. And I was driving that. And I was in Louisiana, and they were filming a movie in Louisiana. And a stunt coordinator happened to live in my building or close by, and would see me riding my motorcycle all the time. And asked me one day, we need women to be in this motorcycle gang. And it's hard to kind of find local women here. And I'm like, yeah, sure. This sounds fun. I was pre-med in college, so I wasn't even thinking at all about creating or the film industry or being in it. And it came knocking on my door. And so I rode the motorcycle in that movie, did a few other things in college, never really took it seriously. I worked for a nonprofit in Nicaragua for 2 years, and I was studying to go back to med school, and my phone rang and said, hey, it was a Friday night, and they're like, we need you in California on a Monday. And that was my big shift. So it didn't come until 3 years after I was first introduced to the industry that I actually took it seriously and have loved it ever since. I love the stunts, and now I'm also loving the acting as well. So I'm really excited for more roles that kind of incorporate the two together, such as the one here in Unhinged.
Unhinged is coming out July the 10th, starring Russell Crowe. You'll be able to go check that out. Juliene Joyner joining us on the line right now. She plays the role of Mary in the film. So let's talk about how you originally got into this industry. What kind of hobbies or clubs did you partake in when you were in high school? And did anything that you did back then prepare you for what you're doing now?
Yes, definitely. So I was always the athlete. I was the big jock. Always.
What sports?
Every sport. Okay, so
every sport.
Tennis. I got really into tennis. Basketball was my number one sport. Basketball and track were like my through and through sports. My heart was always in basketball, though. Track, cross country, tennis, basketball. I did play soccer and softball, but I kind of quit those early on. I had to make more room for the others. So those were my big sports, and that definitely led me in. And I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the country. I was always riding dirt bikes, always riding four-wheelers, always just outside, always playing outside, climbing trees, jumping off things, like always taking it to the limit, always setting up a ramp and ramping my bike on it, for instance. Like I was always looking for stuff like that. My mom was constantly like, she tells stories. I would come home with a bruised knee or an elbow. Always. I was always doing something kind of adventurous and using my body. So that has come into film for sure. And me and my friends were always making movies. We thought we were hilarious, and I actually still have some of those. So that I see that parallel.
Oh man, I feel like those need to be released for the world to see at some point. Is there any chance that that's going to happen eventually?
There is a chance that that's going to happen. It's actually funny you say that, because my mom reached out to me and told me just recently she had gotten all of our old computers, like the hard drives, put on an external drive. So I actually now have access to all of this stuff that I didn't even know existed. She's been sending me stuff, and I have been like, what? It's really cool to see, though, because now that I'm in the film industry, I can look back at all these movies I was doing and was like, wow, that's still me through and through. So,
well, Julian, not to put you on the spot right here, but if you have any sort of clip that's like 10 seconds that you could send our way, I would love to put it in the interview just to see the original Julian OG actor that she did way back in the day. If you have anything, feel free to send it. If they need some more time, feel free to just keep it as well.
Okay.
For those of us that are the uninitiated, that aren't in the stunt world, obviously there's a lot of different moves or types of falling that you probably are aware of that the rest of us just wouldn't know about. Is there anything that you do or any sort of stunt that, in particular, when you do it on a set, you really think it looks so much cooler when it's done editing and you see the final product that you look forward to just seeing the final edit? Once you've done it, you know it's going to look cool.
Not in particular that I can think of that is kind of better after the edit. I haven't done, what I haven't worked on is, I would imagine that I haven't worked on a lot of the Marvel films. I did do Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I was a moped rider in that. So I would imagine that those would be kind of some big ones, because I know they do a lot of that stuff in front of green screen and things. And then like later you actually get to see what it looks like when you're flying through the air and punching someone, but not necessarily for me. I will say almost the opposite. Sometimes I hit the ground really hard, and when I see the edit, I'm like, that didn't look nearly as like it felt. I felt that, and that kind of looks like, oh, she fell. So, but yeah, lots of good stuff. And sometimes with edits, you'll see it'll be this long fight scene, and they'll cut it short. So for the most part, I've seen the opposite of like, man, that's not showing how hard that really went down.
Well, fun fact for anybody that, watched my some of my stuff on Food Network, when we did the Food Network cooking scenes, we would be in the kitchen for like 8 hours out of the day, but it would only show about 2 or 3 minutes of that 8 hours on the show, and you'd be like, oh my gosh. So I can relate, not all the way to hitting the ground and falling, but I mean, I burned my finger on the side of a skillet one time, so that's similar, I guess, sort of.
Right, but there's a difference. It's either you burn your hand 9 times after that.
That's true. I'll tell you what, though, if I did go back and keep burning my hand, I probably wouldn't have stayed on set very long. They probably would have said, what are you doing? Get out of here.
Yeah.
You talk about Ant-Man versus Wasp and being on a production like that. When you think about the fact coming from Louisiana to being in one of the biggest movies of a year, like an Ant-Man versus Wasp, do you ever look back and just think, wow, I've come a long way. I'm not in Louisiana anymore?
Yes, I do. But I kind of forget to sometimes. Everyone knows in this industry, you're kind of end up looking for the next thing. So that's something I'm really working with on myself and on my longer journey. Something I'd like to see more of is that appreciation, and is giving myself the time to look back and be like, not on to the next thing. Look at how far you've come from where you started, and how your dreams kept kind of finding you. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about my whole journey, is the fact that I was like, okay, you gotta grow up. You gotta be a doctor. You gotta be a nurse, or like a businessman, CPA, like what I see around me. And never once did creator kind of come in, and how it did keep coming up and find me. So I want to take the time more. So I will, thank you for the reminder to look back and really compliment myself, and all the people who have kind of helped me along the way too, of course.
Well, on behalf of everybody that's watching your career right now, I will congratulate you on how far you've come, because it is really cool to see. And I mean, your IMDb credit list is just like, I'm like, wow, this girl has been working. So congratulations on all the work you've been putting in. As we begin to wind down the interview here, we have our final 5 questions. We call it the final 5, and it is your who, what, when, where, and how of right now. So for right now, who do you speak with the most?
Who do I speak with the most? Myself, mostly right now. I'm alone, do a lot of self-work, and my mother and my sister.
What object do you use every single day?
My phone.
Have to. When did you know you wanted to be involved in entertainment?
When it came knocking on my door. I probably knew it as a kid, but it had to come call my name a few times.
Where is your dream vacation?
Dream vacation is somewhere like the French Polynesian or Maldives or something. I'm going to go totally all out with like a pool underneath my feet or something, and in my room, just obnoxious, that would be a thing.
Finally, how do you define success?
How do I define success? I truly define it with keeping your joy. I think that if we are able to keep our joy through our day-to-day and through our work, and we use that joy to spread love, I think we are successful. And not to be too perfect. Trying to be too perfect takes all the fun out of everything. So for me, it's really holding on to joy and letting go of perfection. And in there, you will find success.
She is Julienne Joyner. You can see her portraying the role of Mary in Unhinged, coming out July the 10th, starring Russell Crowe. Julienne, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on. You did a great job today.
Thank you for having me so much.